Free games. We all love free games, and this video has 45 free games for you to sink your teeth into for the Meta Quest 2. Now this is a compilation of the previous two videos I made, so some here are demos, others are in beta phase, but they can all be found on APPLAB and SIDEQUEST with links down in the description. So subscribe if you love free VR games, and let's go. So recently I was looking for a cheap way to upgrade a computer of mine from Windows 10 Home to Windows 10 Pro, and I came across CDKOffers.com, who offer cheap Windows 10 Pro keys at a more than reasonable price. Now what's even better is that they are offering a huge 25% off for my subscribers. Now to get one, all you need to do is go to their website, search Windows 10 Pro and click on Pro OEM Global. Click Buy Now and proceed to checkout. Now if you use promotion code LAD, you'll get 25% off the price. Now all you have to do is pay however you like and paste the provided product key into the About section of your PC and watch it go from this to this. And that's it guys, you've got Windows 10 Pro. So first up then is Metro Meltdown. This is a single player VR shooter where your goal is to escape the city you live in due to a variety of different reasons. In the game, you have to travel around a neon style city, and you can use a variety of different techniques like running, shooting, riding and even grappling to battle your way through the city in order to escape. Currently there is only the first level of the game where you can only run and shoot, but the game also claims to have sandbox levels you can mess around in too. Next up is Night Racer VR. Now Night Racer VR is a free VR game where you must race your chosen vehicle around a racetrack and use power-ups to take hold of victory. There are 4 different game modes in this game: multiplayer, championship, arcade and time trial, with a vast array of cars you can choose from power-ups that are very similar to games like Mario Kart and Crash Team Racing. You can also customize your skin so you can defeat other racers in as much style as possible. Next up is Gorilla Tag. Now when I made my last free game list, I had a bunch of comments saying that Gorilla Tag should be on the list. Now, despite the fact it's not a new game, it did become available on the Oculus store last month, so for those who left a comment on the previous video, this entry is for you. There will also be a few other games inspired heavily by Gorilla Tag on this list, and that brings me to my next free game, which is... Next up is Dungeon Escape Run. Now Dungeon Escape Run is a basic free dungeon escape game where you must do exactly what the title says. You must escape the dungeon. You must avoid traps like spikes piercing through the floor or fire shooting through holes in the walls, and you can even climb ladders to try and avoid those deadly traps. Just be careful not to fall into the molten lava. Monkey Runners. Now this is a Gorilla Tag knockoff that sees you using Gorilla Tag locomotion to run, climb and jump in VR using just your arms, no buttons or sticks or no teleportation, anything like that. Push off of surfaces to jump and squeeze in both the hands to climb. Basically Gorilla Tag, as I said. You can hang out in virtual reality in a virtual jungle and hang out with some friends, or play as a monkey in an open world map. It's entirely up to you. Next up is Dune Riders. Now Dune Riders is a survival game set in a hostile desert where the goal is to gather fuel and resources from abandoned buildings and fight off bandits with the help from any mercenaries that want to join your quest. There is driving mechanics and you can drive around and shoot enemies in what I see to be a very basic game that looks inspired by the Mad Max franchise. At least that's what it looks like to me anyway. Next up is Out of Luck. Now Out of Luck is a free, fast-paced, family-friendly first-person shooting game that is very reminiscent of the Duck Hunt style shooters, only with 360 degrees. Now you must face off against waves of different enemies in a variety of colourful environments, and you can battle cowboys in a western town or face off against hordes of aliens with flying saucers on a hostile planet far away. There is definitely some variety here, and the game was 100% free, so it could definitely be worth playing if you're into that sort of game. Next up is the Red Flowers Open Beta. Now from the developers of the game Stride, the Joyway team is back with a free open beta called Red Flowers. The game puts you in the shoes of a katana-wielding ninja, and you must slice your way through a utopian future full of neon lights and enemies who want to take you down. You can dash, wall run and grapple your way through the levels, and can slice off enemies' limbs with ease. The game is releasing next year, but the beta is ready to play right now. Next up is Breakout Paddle, which is a free new virtual reality game that brings a real-life paddle game to your VR headset. You take out your ping pong paddle and hit a ball against the wall in order to break the blocks over and over again in order to score points. Now, there isn't a story mode, campaign or even online multiplayer. Instead, the goal is to simply compete by getting the high score on the scoreboard. For a free game though, who could complain? Next up is Time Titans VR. Now Time Titans VR is a single player action shooter that reminds me slightly of the very popular game Superhot. The goal is to take down all the enemies by slowing down time to gain the advantage. You can shoot, punch and slice through enemies while unleashing absolute mayhem Not only can you shoot, but you can use an assortment of melee weapons like maces, battle axes, side swords, and many others. Here is another game currently in the beta phase, and it's another game by the developers of the games Drive Joyway. Stack is a VR multiplayer game about dashing through post-apocalyptic environment and timing disc bounces to eliminate your opponents. As it's in beta, there are currently 3 maps that can be played with up to 6 players, and you can create private games up to around 10 players. There is loads of content planned for this game also. Next up is Musical Journey. Now this is more of a utility than a game, but the sound of it is super interesting. Now Musical Journey allows you to create music with just your hands in a VR space. You can mix samples and combine music to your liking, from blues to trap. You can learn about the history of instruments and genres, as difficult musical styles have developed thanks to migration. The developers say it's easy to pick up and anyone can start making awesome music right away. Now there is a huge educational element here that fans of making music should find at very least entertaining, and at the most very useful to have. Next up is the Horse Rider VR demo. Now this game does exactly what it says on the tin. The game allows you to assume control of a horse rider as you ride through a blockade of undead bandits and rebels, with the goal of delivering letters, supplies, or legendary weapons. There are many different levels to choose from as you travel from the Dragon's Lair and become the hero on horseback. Next up is, I hope I'm going to say this correctly, Arakuri Kengeki. Now this is a free VR sword fighting game that sees you take out deadly samurai robot using a trusted katana sword, all set in feudal Japan. There are different stages you must progress through as you get to progressively more dangerous enemies. Outside of that, there isn't much else to say, so let's get on to the next one, which is... So next up is Penguin Paradise. Now Penguin Paradise puts you in the flippers of a skiing penguin, and your goal is to slide down the slippery and snowy hills while having fun exploring 4 different Arctic maps. The description of the game says that Penguin Paradise is the first of its kind multiplayer slip sliding adventure game for all ages, but I don't know how accurate that is. Shovel Hands. Now this is going to be the last Gorilla Tag copy on this list. Now Shovel Hands follows an almost identical setup to that of Gorilla Tag, but the palette is slightly different by being more cartoony than the other Gorilla Tag copies. There isn't anything unique about this game though, so let's just get on to the next one. Next up is Slurpees. Now Slurpees is a free VR multiplayer game based off the classic game called Snake, where your goal is to control your colourful space snake with your hand and eat everything you can as quick as you can in order to get as big as humanly possible. See what I did there? Oh, and try to avoid other players. There are over 18 different solo maps as well in case you want to go it alone. Next up is Paper Planes Landing. Now Paper Planes Landing is a demo that takes the old days of making paper airplanes and giving it an objective in VR. The casual game experience sees you land paper airplanes in a box so the paper plane can reach safety. It is designed to work with hand tracking in a limited room scale area, and as this is an early demo of the game, there is currently only 1 level to play. Next up is Box Tricks. Now Box Tricks is a competitive puzzle game where your goal is to build using cubes. Now it does have a twist in the sense that you have the ability to use augmented reality in which to use as a background for the game, and the experience can also be customized. That being said, it's very similar to a game called Cubism, so if that's the kind of game you're into, then this could be a nice free game for you to enjoy. Next up is Cleopatra Pinball. Now this virtual reality pinball game is set in ancient Egypt, and the game allows players to fully immerse themselves in the world of Cleopatra and Alexander the Great. These games combine traditional pinball gameplay with elements of history and adventure as players learn about ancient Egyptian culture and encounter famous historical figures. The VR technology allows players to see the game board and objects in 3D and is both meant to be fun and educational. Next up is Rollerhop. Rollerhop is a free VR game that uses the same kind of arm swing and locomotion as the game Gorilla Tag, which everybody knows. The only difference here is that you must use your arms to hop from platform to platform and get to the goal at the end of the level. That's basically it. Next up is Vortex VR. Vortex VR is a French-only immersive game or experience where you must explore the universe of the Vortex series and help the commissioner solve the crime. You must inspect the crime scene and control time in order to interact with objects to find all the clues and solve the crime. Best part about it is that you only have 20 precious minutes to do it. This is one for those who like a bit of mystery with their VR games. Next up is SCP Lab Rat. Now in SCP Lab Rat, you are the test subject in an underground SCP research facility. When a containment breach occurs, you must find your way out, and you must escape the SCPs, discover different anomalous objects, and collect valuable resources along the way. The game has features like single player and multiplayer modes with a variety of items and weapons. It also has an immersive player suited with a full body and physics interaction. The game itself looks a bit like Half-Life and Bonap, but it's still in very early development. Next up is Class Warfare. Class Warfare is a class-based shooting game with a focus on choosing a diverse range of characters, each with their own unique playstyle and abilities. It's set in a futuristic world where players must use their chosen class's weapons and equipment to overcome challenges and emerge victorious. Class Warfare City is randomly generated each time you play, ensuring that no two gameplay experiences are the same. The entire point of the game is being able to adapt to different scenarios with different classes. The city is filled with different opponents and obstacles, including clueless robots, alien gangs, trigger-happy soldiers, and you must recruit mercenaries to carry out your dirty work for you. Next up is Age of Joy, a retro arcade gallery experience. Now, Age of Joy looks to recreate the feeling of going into an arcade back in the 80s and 90s by allowing you to step into a VR arcade and then play classic titles in a classic setting. The best thing is about this app is that if you do own ROMs, you can deploy them within the games, effectively giving the option of which games you want to play. There are also NPCs floating around to try and immerse you into the game further, but this is a clever idea. Next up is Builder's Risk. Now, did you ever want to grow up to be a health and safety advisor? No, me neither. But for those who did, Builder's Risk gives you the opportunity to enter a building site and identify any risks that may arise on a real building site. Now, granted, this is less of a game but more as a tool for those who work in this profession by allowing them to brush up on the skills of the job. But it's free, so it's fair game for this list. Next up is Meta Zombies VR. Now, Meta Zombies VR is a free VR survival game that has shooting mechanics, horror elements, and all set in a post-apocalyptic setting. What claims to be different about this game is that it's supposed to use blockchain technology in order to take advantage of NFTs, although I'm not 100% sure how that actually works within the game. Next up is Undead Quest. Now, this undead-oriented wave shooter is a demo where you must fend off hordes of funny little skeletons and undead enemies using nothing more than a bat ball and a few spells. The point is to hit the ball at the enemies or cast spells to take them down while moving from one location to another. The demo has 7 levels with 7 different enemies and several other cutscenes. What more could you want for free? Next up is Snowball VR. Now, are you tired of constant first-person shooters or Gorilla Tag knockoffs? I mean, I am. If you ever wanted to fight with snowballs while being in the comfort of your own home, then this game pitches 4v4 in a snowball showdown. There is multiplayer with random players, or you can play with friends. There are power-ups available to recharge energy, get a shield, or even a snowball toy gun. It's entirely up to you. Next up is Car Fight. Car Fight is a VR first-person shooting cockpit game where you must steer your vehicle using your controllers and then take out your opponents using weapons mounted on your vehicle. There is a multiplayer mode, and like all driving games, there are power-ups that give you different abilities that you can use to gain advantage over your opponent. If you're looking for a free VR vehicle combat game, then this could be for you. Next up is Stuck in Infinity VR. This is a backroom style game that currently is in its alpha phase. This sees you enter the backrooms maze with the only goal is to attempt to escape. The difference with this as opposed to some of the others is it has multiplayer with up to 30 people at the same time as you travel around using Gorilla Tag locomotion. Can you escape? Who knows, but for free it could be worth finding out. Next up is Bubble Trip 2. Now, this is a puzzle shooter like the classic Beehive Bedlam, just in virtual reality. You're in the center of a spherical area whose surface is gradually covered with marbles. You must aim your own colored marbles at the same colors in order to break clusters of 4 marbles or more. Excuse the use of the term marbles all the time. The goal is to create multipliers in order to score maximum points and receive bonus marbles that will allow you to clear all the marbles from the area or avoid being overwhelmed by an increasing stream of marbles. I'm losing my marbles, just say marbles this much. Next up is Prehistoric Domain. Now, Prehistoric Domain is a free VR game that aims to bring you a Jurassic Park style experience in the comfort of your own home. You can travel to different parts of the park and interact with life-size dinosaurs and other extinct animals. You'd think there'd be more dinosaur-oriented games on the Quest 2, but now there is one more to add to the list, and it is absolutely free. Next up is the Haunted APK. Now, Haunted APK is an anthology of 3 different VR experiences that vary widely in style, from a horror-style skiing experience to a Doom-style first-person VR shooter, and even a samurai-style slash-em-up. They aren't scary though, so don't expect it to be, but there's definitely some fun to be had, so it might be worth checking it out. It doesn't cost you a thing. Next up is Tron VR. Now, Tron VR is obviously a VR version of the game from the movie Tron. For those who don't know it, you must ride a futuristic motorbike in a futuristic neon setting, equipped with a light trail, and you must take out your opponents by forcing them into the light beam, walls, or other enemies. You could even destroy them with your disc. Everybody knows the game, so let's move on. Next up is Talk to Me. Now, Talk to Me isn't so much of a game but more of an experience or tool. The game is made so you can assume control of an avatar and record a question you may need an answer to, and then you can assume the opposing role of answering the question. The point is to give you some clarity and allow you to look at the problem from a different perspective. I mean, it's an interesting idea that allows you to assume different avatars also, but I can't help wonder how long it will be until Morgan Freeman sues the developers. Next up then is Gun Hit. Gun Hit is a Western inspired shooter which sees you take out enemies while riding on a trusty horse. There are a few things planned for the game, including creating a salon, new weapons and horses, and a multiplayer part of the game so you can get involved in salon battles, but it's still in very early production and there isn't much gameplay to share. Next up is Space Blast. Space Blast is a free VR first-person shooter set on a spaceship, and you must use sci-fi weapons to shoot robots inside of said ship. But that's really it, so on to the next one. Next up is VRsurf. Now, with inspiration from the Counter-Strike Global Offensive surf maps, VRsurf is a game where you can slide from slope to slope and ramp to ramp at very high speeds. You can challenge friends to race via multiplayer lobbies, beat high scores, and if you are experienced enough at the game, you could set some records. This game kind of reminds me of Cluster Truck without the truck. Next up is Lead Balloon. Now, Lead Balloon is a basic free VR game that just simply allows you to shoot balloons as they move around the area, and if you shoot certain ones, it will do damage to you and release some gas. That's pretty much it, so on to the next one. Next up is True Tennis VR. True Tennis VR is a virtual reality tennis game aimed towards giving you skills that can transfer to a real game of tennis with leaderboard and coaching. There is also an option to purchase a true racket, which is an immersive tool to help replicate the feel of a real tennis racket. But it isn't necessary for the actual game, so it can be played without. Next up then is Firezone. Firezone is a large-scale multiplayer shooter with explosive combat, vehicles, and up to 16-player lobbies. Player can hitch a ride in multiple types of vehicles such as jeeps, tanks, and helicopters with huge battles of up to 16 players. You can also have AI bots as well to compete across intense game modes, featuring exciting VR combat and chaotic gameplay. Anyway, that's it for me for now. Bye-bye. Next up is Path Tracing. Now, Path Tracing is a very unique idea that builds upon the AR capabilities of the Quest device. The idea is to use the Quest as a foundation in which to trace images in real life. First of all, lay an image you want to trace over in real life in a digital canvas and simply draw over it in the real world. This is when I had to put on list due to how cool it actually is. Now I can pretend I can actually draw stuff. Next up is SCP VR, which is basically a VR version of the popular PlayStation Portable emulator of the same name. This allows you to play all your favorite PSP games in VR, allowing you to see them from a different perspective. Obviously, it doesn't come equipped with any actual games, but it's interesting to see the different ways people are utilizing the Quest to get more out of old games and technology. Anyway, that's it from me for now. Peace.